Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining NACE for today's webinar with InstaWork on planning a successful summer event season. My name is Lauren Hussein, and I'm from NACE, and I'll be here to assist you during the webinar. Please note this webinar is being recorded, and I will send out a link to it as soon as possible. If you have a question, please type it into the Q&A box or the chat box, and we will answer it aloud or via the chat. You can also raise your hand at any point if you need assistance. By attending this webinar, you are eligible for one CPCE contact hour and one CMP contact hour. I would now like to hand it over to Emma Sayer, the marketing manager from InstaWork.
Hi, everyone. Hopefully there are some familiar faces in the audience. I know many of you from past events. As member of InstaWork, we are national partners with NACE, and we're super excited to be here. So thank you all for joining. We also have two incredible featured panelists today. The first is Alexis Miller, event planner from Feast on This Catering, and Jamie Adams, operation manager at Paisley and Jade. You guys also might recognize them. They've been involved in the NACE community for a bit in different sorts of ways, which we'll speak to a bit later. But for those of you who don't know yet, InstaWork is a flexible staffing solution used by caterers and event specialists across the nation. We're in over 25 cities and also Canada, which is fun. Our application allows people to book shifts for front and back of house staff with over 2 million professionals on our platform currently working. So we're here to bring in a little bit of insight from your peers, be able to discuss how to prepare for summer event season and address some of those aspects of your toolkit, which may be a little bit trickier than others, whether that's staffing or staying motivated when morale is low and burnout is high. So ready to dive into this. But as Lauren mentioned, if you guys have questions, don't hesitate to drop in, be able to share them with the chat. I'll try to do something towards the end. If it's sort of relevant to that moment, I'll try to share as much as I can in the moment, but don't hesitate. We'll get to everything and save time for a Q&A at the very close of the event. So before we kick it off, I'd love for our speakers to introduce themselves. So Alexis, can you tell us a little bit about your organization and role at Feast on This Catering?
Sure. So I work at Feast on This Culinary and Event Production in San Diego, California. We are the only deaf-owned catering company in all of Southern California, which is really cool. I'm the event planner for the company. But since it is a small business, I do a little bit of everything from staffing to event management to planning and sales as well.
Kind of like a jack of all trades. I know that that's probably common for many of you in the audience too. As smaller businesses, it's important to sort of be able to cover a lot of bases, and being an event planner looks very different, a lot of different companies and organizations. So it'll be nice, I think, today to have sort of different perspectives. In Jamie's case, what about you? I know that you kind of handle the operation side at Paisley and Jade. So what is that like, and what does a typical day look like for you?
Yeah, so I am the operations manager at Paisley and Jade here in Richmond, Virginia. For those of you that don't know, we are an eclectic rental company. So we do everything from upholstered seating to like tables, chairs, backdrops, customization, vinyl lettering, basically things that you don't have to wash. So we don't do linen, flatware, or glassware. But the best thing about my job is, well, let's say best and worst, is every day is definitely different. It's basically a toss-up of a game of Tetris when loading a truck for delivery, and then a game of like, am I the best map quester or not, with figuring out and routing our delivery and pickup schedules.
So it sounds like a little bit of jigsaw puzzling, but I think that is something that will be super helpful. We'll dive into more for sure, because juggling a lot of pieces is a big part of events in general. There's a lot of details. I've tried to do happy hours, which some of you guys may have attended. It is not easy. It looks easier than it is, and that's the beauty of it. So I think for us, before we really jump into those details and tips that you guys have based on your experience and insight, I think it's important to sort of paint a picture of how the industry has changed. There's been a lot of differences in the past year, some for the better, some for the worse. And I think as companies have continued to adapt as to what 2022 looks like and beyond, I think it's going to be sort of a big question in the audience, for sure. So Jamie, I know that operations, you mentioned this Tetris piece and puzzling sort of logistical bits together. But what are the biggest shifts that you've seen from your perspective? I know that it's more of a boutique space, but what is that really, what impact has that had for you and your team?
I think the biggest thing is that we are looking farther ahead and farther out, especially myself when I am planning and scheduling, because we want to be super realistic about what we already have on the books, as we still have a few leftover postponements from COVID. Hopefully after the spring and early summer season, we will be done with them. But as we still have those kind of rolling over while still booking new business, we want to be super smart. We don't want to recreate what happened this fall with so many postponements and new business. It was just like awful. And we all know it. We all went through it. Consistent Friday, Saturday, Sunday events. Some people had Thursday weddings, some people had Monday weddings. It was just a lot. So the biggest thing for us is just taking a look to make sure like what we have on the books is not what we've had in the past, and like that we are able to maintain it with trucks, with the amount of staff we have, so that we're not causing burnout for our employees. Another big thing that we're seeing is, instead of the crazy busy months where here in Virginia, May and June are very popular and October is the crazy fall season, we're really starting to see events are kind of staying consistent year round. July and August, which normally are very, very quiet here just because of the heat and humidity and nobody wants to be outside. But we're starting to see a lot of orders already on the books for those months that would be particularly quiet. So I think it's more a set of the highs and lows for those event seasons and those event months. We're staying pretty consistent, which is wonderful because we have the hours for our staff year round. Our staff is staying on their feet, on top of things. They don't have like that high and low of, oh, we're in event season. Oh, we're not event season. Oh, event season's next week. What? And like having to retrain and kind of get back in the swing of things. So I think it's much more consistent without it being overbearing, which it has been in the past year and two.
Thank you for that. One note that I know that you have sort of brought up to me in the past is just around how the seasonality shift has also been in part to not just event planners and sort of the event space, but across the board with venues and also with customer expectations or how they're sort of approaching it. Could you provide a little more detail with that as well?
Yeah, I think the biggest factor for there being a little bit more consistent year round is that venues have learned, and after this past fall and the past year, with the amount of postponements and being flexible and honoring those Friday or Sunday events, they are coming and out of the past fall being like, we cannot do that again. So they're blocking off dates. Caterers are blocking off dates because everyone is short staffed right now, and they don't want to promise that they can accommodate a wedding if they don't have the servers to pass food and you don't have bartenders. So I think as an industry as a whole, people are just starting to be smarter and also know their limits without pushing it too far. Where I think a lot of small businesses would want to do that. And they're like, oh, well, we can't say no. But they're also now like, okay, this is not realistic. We have to be smart about this. So venues are now only taking one wedding a weekend instead of booking 3 a weekend, causing your vendors to come day of, either pick up that night or first thing the next morning, while they also have other Saturday weddings that they have to go deliver to and pick up. So it was kind of a strain on everyone involved in the industry.
So it's like a communal team effort to say, let's give ourselves a little bit of a break.
Yeah.
It's interesting to hear. Did you experience something similar in San Diego, Alexis? Was it sort of something that you've heard as well in your experience? Is it hitting both coasts?
Yeah, so this is definitely like a national thing that is going on. It's not just one side or the other. we're all kind of trying to take a step back after this last year and deciding, okay, not all business is good business. There's a lot more of qualifying of clients that's been going on recently, which I think is a good thing, because we want to make sure that when we provide our services, we're providing our best, and we're providing something that lives up to our brand. We want to make sure that that's there every single time. But if we take more and more and more events, we can't always ensure that. So when we're more like picky on what business we do, we're able to present a better brand overall.
I think that's a major point. It's not easy to spread yourself thin and continue to just push and push and push. At one point, it sort of hits a limit of what can we actually be realistic about. I think this realistic approach is something both of you mentioned. And I'm curious whether, Alexis, I know company culture is huge at your organization, and I'm sort of curious whether that has played into it at all, whether the way that you have started to think about how can we be our best, even if it isn't doing less. Is that something you've experienced in terms of a top-down feeling where your manager, your leadership is feeling that way as well? Or is it something that's kind of burst out in the last sort of year?
Yeah, so that's always kind of been a focus of ours, is making sure the overall well-being of everyone involved in the company. So even when, I don't know, we're very busy, we make sure that we have time to reflect on what we're doing, time to make sure that we ask our employees, hey, are you doing okay today? Like, how are you really doing? That's something that we like to focus on as well, is the overall well-being of our employees, because in the end, they're the ones who are portraying our brand. They're the face of the company. I'm the face of the company. Our owner's the face of the company. Our delivery driver is the face of the company. So we want to make sure that everyone is included in everything that we do, really.
So it sounds like onboarding can be a big piece of that as well, when you're adding in new, whether they're flexible or full-time staff to your team. That can be tricky sometimes. Like, how do I really let people know what Paisley and Jade means, or what Feast on This means, and how you can really represent that brand? So Jamie, I know that you've worked a lot to bring in new staff, like to be supervisor or on-site support. So how have you worked with your team to sort of share this message and relay those really important cultural pieces that make an event successful, right? Having everyone be aligned. How have you tried to educate new people that are onboarded to your team?
Yeah, so our biggest thing is kind of utilizing everyone that we have and making it really is kind of a team effort. We all have our roles, but we know that when push comes to shove, if something is falling behind, if a truck is stuck somewhere and they're running behind schedule and we have to get it offloaded and loaded again to go right back out the first morning, we all kind of step in and help. The biggest thing that we started to implement this past fall, not only did we move into a new warehouse in August, but then we had the fall event season that we had. It was a little bit overwhelming. So we started to implement a few positions during our weekends that were super busy to kind of help and eliminate the stress and kind of panic of, oh no, what do we do? So we now always have an on-call person. So if someone is running late, if a crew member is not able to make it, or someone is a no call, no show, especially on those early morning shifts when someone might sleep through their alarm, we have someone already scheduled and they know that if they get a call, they have to be ready to come in and kind of hop in and go. We also have someone who's always set at our warehouse on our big delivery days, which is normally Saturdays, so that they can be in the warehouse working on whatever projects they already have or just what's on like their to-do lists around the office, so that if something breaks, if something didn't make it on a truck, we have someone already here that can get in a truck and take that item wherever it needs to be. We also have someone here on Sundays. That is what we call our receiver. So when all those big orders are coming back, I like to call them more of our air traffic controller, because they really are here just to like sanitize all the items as they're coming off the trucks. If they're going back out the following weekend or earlier, like midweek for an earlier event, instead of putting it right back on the shelf, we have spaces already designated for the following week's orders. So we're trying to cut out that additional time and effort that our crew and warehouse would have to do by putting it away, then pulling it right back out. So we just check it out, make sure there's no damages. If it's a upholstered piece, spray it, sanitize it, and then it goes right back to the order that it's going out next week. So that item's already pulled and prepped for the following week. So we're trying to take advantage of us all as a team working together and working smarter, not harder, and trying just to eliminate those additional steps that require more time. And so we're trying to get that back for our team by being able to utilize a few more people on the weekend. It has helped cut off so much stress, and the damages that are coming back are just minimal to what they've been in the past, because our team just is not feeling as stressed and pressure with the amount that's coming in and going out for inventory. So it really is kind of full circle that we're all able to pitch in, because in the end, a damage that doesn't come back isn't requiring our wood shop to stop what they're doing to come and fix a broken leg on a chair, or a broken table has to get rebuilt, something needs to get repainted. So it's just full circle. By adding in an additional support system, it's helping everyone overall.
Yeah, it sounds like this additional overhead maybe or lift at first actually plays to really save everyone a lot of stress and a lot of additional work later on. What would you recommend for someone where they're in a similar boat and are thinking, I know that I am not as efficient as I could be, but I want to make those changes? What would you recommend for them, or where should they start?
I think the biggest thing is just having a talk with your team and seeing where they need that support the most. Our biggest thing was, especially being in a new warehouse, our crew was not familiar with where things were going when they were coming off the truck, especially not only being in the new warehouse, but we had new crew members. So they were also getting familiar with our inventory at the same time. And so myself or Morgan, if we're here on the weekend, we're like, oh, great, that item goes right there to the third row in. And they're like, what do you mean third row? Like they just hadn't gotten accustomed to the new warehouse and the inventory yet. So, but by hearing, they're like, hey, I actually could really use the air traffic controller to kind of point and shoot where things are going, because I don't want to do the heavy lifting of the items coming off the truck. I will if I have to, but if I can help while they are bringing something off and just be like, hey, it goes right here. Oh, okay, go through this door right there, and just kind of point and shoot, that's taking that time off of them. And that's easy for me to do. Because I already know that, and then that still gives them time to get familiar with inventory. And every time they're coming in and placing the items back, they're learning where our items are going. So I think it's really big to just sit down with your team and hear what they're kind of having, not issues, but maybe are taking them a little bit longer than they would like to. And hearing what that is, because there could be an option that you can offer to kind of take out that middle part to be that support for them.
So it sounds like, it plays directly to the title of this webinar, but setting people up for success is really creating the space for them to tell you also where they're having struggles and being very honest about I can do this better. I just can't with what I currently have. So Alexis, I see that you're nodding. How have you sort of implemented this in your own team? How do you find that you've created or recommend that other people work to create sort of that space where they can level with their employees, no matter whether they're a brand new driver or it's someone who is a member of their core staff that's been there for years and is hitting a point of frustration, for example?
Yeah, so we definitely have an open line of communication here. We definitely like to make sure that if somebody has a frustration or a need, that we assess it and we take it seriously, no matter if it's something small, something big, if it's, hey, I need a pair of scissors that matches my desk decor, like me, I got my pink pair of scissors. But sometimes it's something more major, like, hey, this part of loadout isn't working. Or whenever we come back, everything's a mess. Or when I come in the morning, I can't get to the warehouse because people leave things in the middle of the road or something like that. We just like to be able to keep the line of communication open so that people, all of our employees, can make sure that if they have a need, that it's going to be met, that they have that expectation of, hey, something's not working. If I go to our upper management, if they come to me, if they come to our owners, that need is going to get met somehow. And we just have to build that like trust between us and our employees that, hey, if I say something's a problem, the problem's going to get fixed. And I think that's really important.
Definitely. I think having, like you mentioned, having trust both directions, where if you're expecting your staff to be trustworthy for you, that when they come to you, that you are able to bring that sort of trust back and be able to really build a moment of space, of space, of just like actually being a person realistically.
Yes.
And
We're
sort of
not just robots.
exactly, having a human approach. Are there things that you've experienced, Jamie or Alexis, that have really felt like were a changing point or a turning point for you when you were dealing with someone who was either frustrated or dealing with a moment of yourself where you were frustrated? Did you ever have a point that you sort of woke up and were like, wow, this is going to change how I approach my job or change how I set up my team, in terms of something that you had learned at all? Maybe Alexis, we can start with you.
I can speak to that. So recently we had a long-term employee recently left, which was very unfortunate, but it was very eye-opening because this employee had this feeling of like not being heard, of holding and bottling everything in. And it was really eye-opening for us to be like, oh, we had no idea that she felt like this. We wish she would have come to us. And it's kind of opened up this line of, hey, if there's something happening in your professional life, in your personal life, please come to us, come to your management, come to your owners, come to whoever's in charge, and take a minute and just be like, hey, something is happening. Can we address it? Or, hey, something in my personal life is happening. I might need to take a step back. And that's really kind of like opened our eyes to seeing that we're all people here. And we're all just trying to do our best for ourselves, for our families, for our own lives, really.
Definitely. I think it's like you mentioned, it's everyone's trying to do their best, and acknowledging that can go a really long way. And also having it be top of mind, whereas often people might think about pay or might think about bonuses, but it can go beyond pay and bonuses, I think, in many ways. Jamie, did you have anything that you'd want to add to that in terms of ways that you've sort of added appreciation and this sort of human approach to your team a bit more?
I
think the biggest thing is, especially for a small company and such a small company, it's so easy to just be so involved. And as the operations manager, I'm always seeing where our crew is and knowing that they're out. So yes, I work Monday through Friday, but I'm always kind of on call and on ready on the weekends as well. So it's very easy to just kind of be a little on edge all the time until I kind of get okay, all good here. And especially, for the co-owners as well, they definitely are very hands-on, and they are the same way, either in the warehouse on the weekends or on site, kind of overseeing large deliveries and installations. So I think kind of one of those things that was kind of the moment for all three of us and a lot of our team was implementing those additional support systems, because I think a lot of people, our delivery crew manager especially, feels a lot of pressure as the kind of the lead guy out on the weekends and in charge of all those crews. Having that additional support was a little bit of a weight off our shoulders. Whereas if I'm not kind of scheduled in the warehouse on a specific weekend, I'm not constantly waiting for my phone to go off, or I'm not scared to actually make plans and do something, because I know that I have the support of the team and we kind of all are in it together, but at the same time able to take a deep breath and kind of, okay, I feel good about this and kind of relax now, which was a really great thing to kind of go through and happen all together, where we used to all panic a little bit until we knew everything was all good. And the biggest thing is just with that extra support, it kind of also put in place a chain of commands on the weekends, where if you are the on-call person, this is who you reach out to. If you're an on-site coordinator, this is who you reach out to. If you are the person at the warehouse, this person will let you know once the deliveries are done and you're free to go. So it kind of just made everything a little bit more direct and straightforward. And again, it was just a huge relief, I think, for everyone involved, because we had that extra support while at the same time taking pressure off of everyone, if that makes sense. By having a little bit extra manpower, it just took the weight off your shoulders, which was a huge relief and save, I think, for everyone. I think it also was a huge morale booster for the company and for everyone, especially as such a small company that we are.
Yeah, I think what you said around the insight, especially regarding protecting people's time and really trying to think about how when you're away, are you actually still working? If you are on call, can you really be on a roller coaster ride with your friends in the summer? Like, I don't know if you can do both. Some people might be able to, but it's not easy. So I think you touched on it briefly, but bringing in sufficient hands to make the job easier for everyone can be really important. And I think it would be valuable to sort of dive into that a bit further, especially for Alexis, who's been all kinds of roles. She's working from event server all the way up to event planner, working all the bits and pieces. How does staffing really play into the success of an event? How do you feel it really adds or can take away from how the vision in your head ends up sort of coming to fruition for everyone?
Yeah, so staffing can make or break an event. Having good staff can make or break an event. Having enough staff can make or break an event, really. So a lot of what we do is we make sure that we have our core team trained the way that we want them trained exactly in like our feast core values. We use our feast core values a lot. Like F is for family, E is for excellence, A is for attitude, S is for something, and T is for transformation. But really we use those to teach our staff not really how to serve, because serving, I'm not saying that serving is easy, but anyone can pick up or learn how to serve. It's really those core values that we like to instill in our staff that sets us apart from different caterers. And when we don't have that core staff, we do use like InstaWork or additional flexible staffing. And we like to say that we've trained our staff so well that we can impart that on our flexible staff as well, so that like anyone coming in can see, hey, this is what Feast on This is about. I can tell that by the way their staff is acting, by the way their staff is like a family together or supporting each other. So I guess that would be.
Yeah, really expressing and owning the values as a core staff has been, sounds like what's been most helpful for teaching. It's one thing to say this is what Feast is, but it's another thing to have everyone act that way and function as sort of role models for people that come in. And I think that can also be the hardest thing to do, to really be a united front, and really stay united in terms of the way that you either ask for help or look for solutions to a problem. And I'm sure as being in operations, Jamie, that you face this a lot, where you're trying to balance bringing in different staff members, understanding how to make them feel supported, but also sort of cared for and appreciated. Especially, I know that you've done a lot with drivers, like working with drivers, and I know that a lot of people do. So could you give a little bit of detail around what you've done in terms of shifting sort of your schedules and helping allow people for a bit of an easier lift in terms of what they're doing on weekends?
Yeah, so we have a group of full-time drivers where, like Alexa said, we teach them about Paisley and Jade. They learn our inventory. They learn the ins and out of our trucks. We go to a lot of the same venues. We work with a lot of the same planners. Venues and planners get excited when they see our team on site. So we want to make sure that, they understand Paisley and Jade, who we are, and that they are representing us when we arrive on site. And we want to make sure that our drivers are fully educated. They feel comfortable. Our drivers are our leads when they are on site for deliveries and pickups. So if there is a coordinator to call, if they have to check in with a venue, if they're delivering to a private residence and they need to check in with the homeowner, that, that they feel comfortable doing that. We provide them with everything that they need when on site. I make sure they have a layout before they arrive. The one thing that we do that kind of sets us apart from other rental companies is we do always set our items when we can. There are some instances when we can't, but we do always like to set our items when we arrive on site. And that's because most of our inventory is built in-house. Most of our inventory is very heavy. So we don't want to put that on a catering company. We don't want to put that on a wedding planner if they only have like 1 or 2 assistants. It's just not manageable for them, where our crew knows our inventory. They know how to set it up. They know how to move it. And that way, like, we're not putting that liability on anyone else. So it's making sure that they're fully trained in that and feel comfortable. We offer box truck training courses for our drivers. They all are DOT certified. And then that way, we have a running list of part-time crew. So I always feel comfortable that I can just plug in part-time crew. And then when we are short-staffed, we'll plug in InstaWork, especially when we're in the DC area. And that's a huge saver for us too, because as we are in Richmond, DC is out of town for us. So being able to utilize InstaWork is awesome, because I can put one of my other part-time crew on something that's a little bit more local or in a different area where InstaWork isn't available, like Charlottesville, or if we're going down to North Carolina. And then that way I have InstaWork in DC, and then it's saving me from paying my part-time crew to ride in a truck for 2.5 hours there and then 2.5 hours back. So it's kind of like a win-win. And it's, again, another little Tetris piece of plugging in, what we have on the books every day. Every week is different. we travel all over. So I'm looking to see where we're going. We could be in Richmond, we could be in DC, we could be in Charlottesville, we could be in Maryland, we could be like all over. So it's just kind of plugging where we are and then starting with that full-time staff once they've gone through their training and being able to have that support of this part-time crew and of that additional labor if needed for them.
Awesome. Thank you both. I feel like that definitely gave two sort of perspectives and approaches to staffing that are similar in many ways, but also sort of play into different sort of types of organizations within the same industry. But another sort of piece, I know that you guys know this far better than I do, but a successful event is definitely big piece, your end, your choices, your logistics, but another piece is also the customer and really engaging with customer expectations, with inquiries that come in. And one point that both of you had made is how seasonality has changed in many ways, that now it's not about, wow, June is the best month ever, and then there's a big lull for a second, but now every month can be the best month ever. And there's a lot of opportunity to rake in more promotion for yourself, more opportunities, more revenue as small businesses. So Alexis, I know that you have spoken to this specific qualifying sort of term and used that term earlier. Could you explain a bit about what qualification sort of looks like for your team and how you deal with an influx of business and making sure that it's the right business, so that you guys aren't burnt out and you're also able to take on higher value opportunities? You're on mute. There you go.
Technical difficulties. That's okay. So for us personally, like one of the things that we use as a qualifier is like our minimums. Obviously we're not like the run-of-the-mill caterer where it's like, I'm going to drop you off your food in a tinfoil thing and hope that it stays warm. We're a little bit more elevated than that. So we want to make sure that our client knows that they're going to be paying for that elevated service, not just, oh, you're getting food. So a lot about catering is it's more than just the food. It's the decor, it's the time that goes into planning your event. It's the time that goes into coordinating your vendors, your rental companies, your X, Y, and Z. So that's one qualifier that we use, is sort of like that minimum and setting those expectations of, hey, when you book with us, this is what you're going to get. So they're not expecting one thing or another, and they know what it is that they're paying for as well. Another kind of qualifier that we'll use is sometimes it's attitude, which is the A in feast. Because if I have a client that's like calling me and then emailing me and then calling me, messaging on our Facebook, and not understanding that there's more people in the world than just them who might have an inquiry. A lot of the times those are clients that we might qualify out just because they are not respectful of our time. They don't understand what it is that we do all of the times. Sometimes even that sort of behavior can be a precursor to what kind of client they're going to be. And we like to make sure that the clients we have also fall into our core values, that we're going to treat them like family. We're going to strive for excellence. We're going to share those positive attitudes, and we're going to transform their dreams into reality. And we want to make sure that they're on the same page as us.
Absolutely. I think fit, as you mentioned, fit is a big piece of bridging the gap and making things be a success on both sides and feel like it's a win-win, whether that's they're paying more to really have their vision come true and explaining that, or just validating that minimums are different and the industry standard in many ways looks different than it did a year ago. Jamie, would you sort of say the same on this or something different? What has been your experience? Because I know Paisley and Jade is kind of like the cherry on top for many events. So it might not be like flatware that you just have to have, but it's something that can maybe be a little bit more difficult to bridge the gap with in some cases. What's been your experience with that?
Yeah, definitely. We, as a specialty rental company, we are not a need for all weddings and events. We are definitely a want. And most of the clients that reach out have already know that they want to use us and kind of have budgeted for that, on top of other additional rentals, like their linens and glassware and china. But some of the things that we've done, especially after this fall, to kind of implement and manage those expectations is we first just did a full review of like what we were charging, what our order minimums were, depending upon how far we were traveling, what our delivery fees were, and then of course, what were we charging for our inventory pieces individually. So we kind of did a full look at that and increased everything kind of across the board. So we've increased all of our order minimums. We've increased our delivery fees, our retrieval fees. We do have a tiered option based on the flexibility of the venue that we're delivering to. And as you move up, it's a higher cost. Basically, if your delivery window or your pickup window, the smaller it is, the higher it's going to cost because it's giving me the least amount of flexibility with our schedule. So we want to be able to accommodate that, make sure I have a truck available, accommodate the gas, of course, for that. Right now, we also kind of took a look at the busier months previously, and as we are still seeing the consistency kind of throughout the year, we do now have higher order minimums for the normal peak seasons for us. So for your fall, it's the September, October, November. And for the spring, it's that April, May, June. And so based on where we would deliver, it's going to be a higher order minimum. And those order minimums are before the delivery fees. So we have someone who kind of handles the phone, handles all those initial inquiries to our generic Paisley and Jade contact email. So she can say like, thanks so much for reaching out. Based on your date and your location for your event, here is the order, your order minimum. Please let us know if you would like to move forward and we can put you in touch with that event specialist. So we're setting the expectations kind of right off the bat and letting them tell us yes or no if they're still interested before immediately passing them on to our event specialist who's already working with confirmed clients, updating confirmed orders, because that's something that we can filter and take off their plate until we know that the client is like, yes, I'm definitely in, like send me on over. And then that time we'll just transition them right over to get a proposal started. It also is really great when we have people who just inquire and they just want to know prices of specific items. We can, again, give them that information right away while not having to pass that along to the event specialist as something that might just fill their inbox. So again, it's kind of taking that weight off of someone else and that specific department where that used to fall on, and being able to help them out and kind of relieve their inboxes by answering these simple questions. And then once we know that it's good to go for an order, we then pass it on over. So we're kind of, again, working smarter, not harder. We are increasing because we know what our inventory is worth. We know what our delivery team does on site. We set everything up. Stuff is beautiful. We make it in-house, you know, kind of covering all of our costs at once. But having that filter, especially in the office for those new inquiries, has been, I think, a huge relief on our event specialists, which is something that used to always tie them down because they kind of felt the need to go first to the people who were already confirmed, and then would loop back around to those initial inquiries. So now everyone is getting responded to, within that 24, 48 hour. And as well, making sure that they have that expectation that we are a business, we do have multiple clients, like the average response time is 24 to 48 hours, especially in event season, especially when so many of us aren't at our desk all the time, when we wear so many hats. Like Alexis could be on site being a bartender at an event, I could be driving a truck. It's just all about kind of managing those expectations and setting that right away when a client reaches out.
Thank you. Yeah. One follow-up that comes to mind as you guys are saying that is, being a small business obviously is different than when you're a huge corporation. You don't always, you have to balance saying no and with saying yes, and trying to figure out, is this an opportunity that really makes sense for me and for my team? And one sort of segment of that, I think, is thinking about growth in 2022, and thinking about how do you recommend a team evaluates for themselves what's worth their time? What have you sort of considered? Is it really bandwidth? Is it really what my people are able to do? Is it more trying to sort of build over time and grow into larger event opportunities as you scale? What does that sort of process look like, or what do you envision for at least your organization later this year? We can start with you, Jamie, because we were kind of on that topic anyway.
Yeah, I think a lot is, there's a lot of factors for us specifically, just because there is no guarantee for us, and we go wherever the client wants us to be. It's not like if you were, I know Alexis, you guys do kind of catering all over. If you were an on-site caterer at a specific venue, like you have that guarantee that when they book, you're good. So we kind of don't have that guarantee. So one of the things that we are always looking at is, as we raised all of our minimums for our orders, okay, so that means that they're bigger orders. So the first thing that comes to my mind is, I need a bigger truck. So of course, so that's the first thing that I'm like, okay, well, we only have one 26-foot truck right now. If we're raising these minimums, that means bigger, larger orders, bigger items. Those can't go on our 18. So it's kind of seeing which direction the company is going, and kind of knowing and being able to guess or manage ahead of time what will come with those changes. So of course, Morgan and I dug right into, okay, does it make more sense for us to long-term lease? Do we add to our fleet permanently? Do we just rent during those busier months? And ran numbers kind of for all those scenarios. So like, that's just one kind of avenue that we've dealt with here, based off one of the changes we've made recently, is trying to anticipate what could happen or what might need to happen if these big orders are coming, and we have like 3 of them in one weekend, and 2 of them are happening in the same time, but one is in Richmond and one is in Maryland. So it's hard because every weekend and everything is different, but being able to try to be on top of it before it happens is what we're trying to do, instead of being caught with your pants down and kind of like, oh no, what do we do now? So that's kind of the biggest thing that comes to my mind just right away, because that definitely pertains directly to me as the operations manager. And then of course, staffing. It's always going to be staffing. It's always changing. I wish I could always keep the staff and the delivery crew that I have, but they always are coming and going. So I'm just constantly trying to build up a roster of people to have on hand. Some days are good, some days are bad. So it's just, again, something that I want to be able to continually keep building, and then have it when we have those crazy weekends. And I am just all for trying to anticipate what is coming farther down the road, so that we aren't kind of stuck there like, oh no, what now?
Yeah, staying agile in terms of knowing that things will change, but hopefully covering your bases enough to be able to make it work in the moment. Alexis, what about you, and what are some ways that your team has tried to prepare for what's to come? Not really, realistically, none of us know what's to come. So kind of as we guess, what are some sort of segments or facets of your organization that you guys have really been looking at and evaluating for later this year?
Yeah, so we're really expecting growth this year. We've kind of been at like this plateau for a while, and then COVID hit, and it's really in this like rebirth and regrowth process right now. We're definitely back to pre-COVID numbers and starting to grow above that. And it's amazing to see that, by the way, that we've like done more in business than we have before COVID, because everyone's canceling, everyone's going back, everyone's coming here, doing there. But it's really just a time of growth for us. And we've been, again, assessing needs is the biggest thing that we've been doing, is assessing needs of the company's infrastructure, of like our staffing needs. So we've been growing our staff. We just recently hired on a new sales team member. So we're also looking for some new team members for our core staff. That's going to help us grow more, hopefully. So we're really looking towards that growth.
And in terms of growth, it looks like it's in all kind of different directions, partially by the size of your team and partially by the type and quantity of events that are coming through. It's amazing to hear that you guys are above pre-COVID numbers. I'm curious, also the audience, feel free to jump in if you guys have questions about this, for sure, because I think learning from your peers is always very interesting. At least for myself, I'm super nosy, so I always want to know what people are up to. But it sounds like as these developments have shifted across the industry, there have been more opportunities to think about growth and sort of think about things on a higher level. So for someone who wants to really instill this in their team, Alexis, and starting to think about, okay, I want to be growth minded, I want to start thinking about things in this way, what do you recommend they start with? Do you think it's really evaluating how they staff their team and the management and the bandwidth around that? Or do you think it falls into a larger question of infrastructure and looking for gaps in your company more widely?
Yeah, so I definitely think it's the latter of the two, that you have to look for those gaps and see, okay, we could be growing right now, but we're not. What's preventing us from doing that? Like, what steps do we need to grow? Like a flower needs the soil and the water and the sunlight. And sometimes in our companies, we're missing one of those key elements. Or we have like a little bit of it, but not enough. Because what if, I don't know, say the number of events is the sun. So sometimes we have cloudy days and we can't really control that, but maybe we could control how much we physically water our plant, how much nutrients we're putting into our businesses and our staff, and a little bit of that as well.
I think that's an interesting sort of comparison of being able to think about, like, even if something goes wrong, having a backup option for growth, in a sense, like being able to think about it in variables, and being able to think about it in a holistic way too, that it's not just one thing that gets you there, but multiple pieces. So I want to, let's see, I think there might have been a question that came through. All right, actually, yes. So we have a question here about, because I know that we're kind of rounding out towards the end, and thank you all for sticking through it. It's been great. About sort of transitioning staff members. So in this case, it was about having a chef work as a personal chef once you've trained them? I'm assuming as like full-time, bringing them on. But I'm curious whether you all have experience as to having someone that maybe was part-time and they became full-time, or someone that you've started to work with and sort of shuffled in terms of they realized they had amazing potential in this particular thing and been able to sort of allow them to grow and blossom in that sense too. Jamie, it looks like, do you have anything sort of to add? It looks like you have something that came to mind.
Yeah, I have two great examples for this. So for our full-time drivers, we always look to our part-time crew first, because we would rather hire from within than bringing someone new in to relearn the inventory, the software that we've been using for our rentals. Our part-time crew normally already is familiar with the venues we go to. They have great relationships with the planners, event coordinators. So we always look to our part-time crew first when we do have a full-time driver position open. And honestly, we find that that kind of gives them a really great sense of ownership, and it makes them want to do a better job as a driver, as a lead on a delivery. And then one other thing that we've done is when we brought on a few positions in the fall, we did kind of because we knew we needed hands, but we weren't sure where those hands exactly were going to go yet. Just kind of getting settled in with everything coming and going with inventory. So we kind of did and now of course I'm blanking on what we called it, but basically these two people did a full 101 of Paisley and Jade. So they were brought on, they went on deliveries, they went on pickups, they worked in the warehouse, they helped with our vinyl and our customization aspect with putting wallpaper and decals on, and kind of saw all different aspects. They sat with me and learned about the logistics and the scheduling. They sat with our event specialists and learned about the sales and how that process kind of goes. And then they did that for a certain amount of time. And so they got to learn the full operation from head to toe. And then once we kind of saw where they really shined and where we could see them really excelling and like really loving, we were able to almost mold positions for them that made sense of where we needed those extra hands and then what makes sense with their strengths and their interest. So it really became amazing because they got the full like 101 of everything with the company. So they kind of know the full ins and outs while also adding those supports and filling those positions that we weren't sure we needed, but we did need. So it kind of let them tell us and like Paisley and Jade kind of tell us what we needed, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But that was definitely probably the most successful thing. And we actually have a new hire that starts tomorrow, and she's going to do the exact same thing all over again, especially like through the seasons and with a couple of people going out for short-term leave, being able to plug those holes. So that was a huge success for us. And that was one thing that also really helped during that fall season, was having those extra hands of learning everything from top to bottom.
It's really cool. It's taking the person and fitting them to the job, but not having to do it the other way around, not being able to define necessarily what that particular role will look like, just knowing that you need additional support and kind of filling it in ad hoc as it's needed, and what that looks like can be different day to day. Alexis, did you have a similar experience, or have you sort of gone through that? I know that you guys are huge on promoting from within, so I'm very interested to hear your sort of perspective on this.
So that's kind of my story. Is I started as part-time staff. I started as flexible staff, really. I was like on-call server, and then I eventually got promoted again and again and again into the position that I am now, because they saw that potential within me. When I became an assistant event planner, I knew nothing about the program, the software, any of that, but I knew the feast core values. And I guess I demonstrated them enough to be one of those core members. So from there, I went, just recently got promoted to event planner without the assistant. So I really got to grow through the company. And it's been amazing to see other people have that potential as well and see them kind of come up with me. And it really creates this loyalty to the company because it shows that the company really cares about me and it cared about my growth. And I've gotten to the point where I am now because of our company, because of our owners, because of everyone around us and our feast family.
It's wonderful. I know. Thank you both so much today. We're rounding out on 11 exactly, or depending where you are, might be a little later. But thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Alexis, for your insight today. We received great feedback already. Some messages in the chat about this discussion. I hope everyone in the audience enjoyed. And if you guys have any questions for either of us, don't hesitate to reach out. All of us are open for those emails. And if you know someone that wants to join a full-time staff, Alexis is hiring. So feel free to reach out. Thank you all for dropping by and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, everyone.
Bye.